We made this.
Welcome to the Starlight Ballroom. Hey!
Hello and welcome to Shipwrecked and Comatose, the Red Dwarf podcast on the We Made This podcast network. Again, I'm neither Mark or Kurt. They've somehow managed to agree to let me. And in this special, we're covering the special one-off pilot / sketch thing called Lovett Goes To Town, which aired in November 1990 as part of BSB's Galaxy's The Last series. And it stars Norman Lovett, who you might know as the first Holly on Red Dwarf. And we'll get to what it's about. And joining me on this, and it's been a long time no speak to Mark Adams, who's one of the regular hosts. How you doing, Mark?
Hello, I'm all right, yeah. I'm looking forward to talking about some tat.
and as always, there's always at least a third one to try and keep two people in check. And the unfortunate role of peacekeeper is Carl. How you doing, Carl?
I'm very good. How about yourself?
I'm good, thank you. I mean, it feels like it's been ages since we've last spoken.
Yes, it does.
Yeah. Peek behind the curtain there. So basically enable Mark's addiction to specials. We are doing another special, this time doing on the aforementioned Lovett Goes To Town, which is like a kind of weird, like almost solo, one-off sketch that was part of a very short-lived comedy show on a very short-lived Sky channel in the early 90s. A bit of background on that. The BBC channel was not the BBC. The BSB channel for the British Satellite Broadcasting was Galaxy, which focused on general entertainment and children's programs, including showing a lot of old Doctor Who episodes. It launched in 26th March 1990, 31 years ago, and closed on the 2nd of December 1990. So it lasted.
Whoa, this must have been one of the last programs then, if this was broadcast in November.
Yeah. So this channel was like, I think it was, I think BSB, British Satellite Broadcasting. I don't know. Is that like one of the original names for Sky? I'm not.
It's what got swallowed up by Sky.
Yeah.
Back in the day, I did work for Sky, and one of the things I did was I looked quite deep into the history of it. And it's been a while since I've had to recall it. From what I understand, Sky and BSB merged, but essentially Sky just bought BSB.
Weren't they B Sky B for a hot minute at one point?
They were B Sky B,
right.
but I think it's because it was Sky and then British Satellite Broadcasting, and that kind of merged. And I think there was a third one as well that all merged into what now has become Sky. But BSB seemed to be doing quite a bit of comedy stuff, like obviously with this and that series. And I remember back in the day having a VHS of Keith Allen's stand-up show. And it was a show that was aired on BSB. And I was like, and I thought, is that Sky before they became Sky? And it was only when I started working for Sky that I realised that no, it's the company that Sky took over.
Well, so slightly interesting about this as well, just looking, because I've been reading onto this channel. So a lot of kind of like light entertainment shows, like some light entertainment shows from this. There was a sci-fi soap opera called Jupiter Moon, which I'm only just reading about now. 150 episodes were made.
150?
Yeah, but only the first 108 were broadcast by Galaxy before it was closed, while the last 42 episodes were broadcast on six years later by the Sci-Fi Channel. The cast included Richard Derrington, Anna Chancellor, Alison Dowling, Lucy Benjamin, Faye Masterson, Richard Linton, and Jason Durr, and the entire series has been released on Region 1 DVD. I have never heard of this.
No, me neither.
Oh, right, yeah.
Isn't that a lot more episodes than Red Dwarf as well?
Yeah. It was aired 3 times a week, and Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. I need to look at this bit later on, but yeah, there was satire programs which were 50 minutes each weeknight called Up Your News. There was a 90-minute music and comedy show by Jules Holland called The Happening. There was a magazine show broadcast Monday to Friday at 6 to 6:30 called 31 West. The Last Laugh, which was a stand-up comedy show where comedians featured Ben Elton, Nick Revell, Jack Dee, Kevin Day, Simon Fanshawe, Punton Dennis, Norman Lovett, Mark Steele, and Mark Thomas, and that's what we'll get back to in a second. It also,
It does feel like they were quite a heavy-hitting channel, and I'd never heard of them, and I'd never heard of Lovett Goes To Town until Matt said, "Do you want to do Lovett Goes To Town?" And I was like, "It's a special, yes."
but yeah, there was. They also this channel also showed BBC archive programs. So they showed Doctor Who, and they had a Doctor Who weekend in September of that year where they just showed Doctor Who all day. Yeah, there was like the Goodies, Steptoe & Son, Dad's Army, Porridge, Death to Us Part, The Young Ones, Are You Being Served? They had American imports as well. So they showed The Facts of Life, Murphy Brown, Parker Lewis Can't Lose, Mike Hammer, Police Story, The Bold and the Beautiful, Hill Street Blues, The Outer Limits, Night Court, etc. And I'm like, this is kind of weird. This is like kind of weird for like an early 90 satellite channel to have this kind of level of programming, particularly some of those channels and stuff. And the final paragraph on the Wikipedia page says that following the merger of BSB and Sky, decision was made to hand over Galaxy's transponder to Sky One, who only took a few programs from Galaxy and incorporated them into the channel's lineup. So what this was the precursor to what is essentially the Sky Network flagship channel, Sky One.
Fascinating. So it was almost like Sky One before Sky One on
Yeah.
the rival company.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I have just found an episode of Jupiter Moon on the YouTubes. So that's just out of my own curiosity. Because when you said science fiction soap opera, I thought two things like, that's probably got tied into the same boat as Red Dwarf when they said don't do sci-fi sitcoms, and two, science fiction soap opera that did 150 episode feels a bit live TV. You know what I mean?
Oh, I miss live TV.
I mean, thinking about it, I mean, how long did El Dorado last?
5 minutes.
Yeah.
Not long.
Then again, this only lasted what? Like 5 months, I think. Yeah. But
well, looking on the Wikipedia for Jupiter's Moon, like you said, that was on constantly. It was. Oh, they must have been really like, we've got to think outside the box to get people on because not many people have got satellite dishes. So we're going to go for science fiction soap operas and, you know, some of the best comedians we can find that aren't on mainstream telly. You know, it's interesting, these early bits of telly and seeing what gets put on and what doesn't.
For me, my experience of basically satellite telly was essentially zero. As a kid, my dad absolutely, steadfastly refused to pay any extra other than the
TV
that thing you pay for the BBC. Thank you.
TV license.
TV license.
Other than the TV license. And all my friends had these channels that I would never access. And I'd go around their house and beg them to put on the WWE, for example. But I never had access to this. And without wishing to be rude to my friends at the time, we were more affluent than they were. It's just that my dad is a stubborn old shitbag. Love you, Pops. He doesn't listen.
But yeah, I think I had friends that had Sky. My grandparents got Sky TV eventually at some point, and that was basically so that so pretty much on a Friday, my dad would go over with the videotape. They would tape Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and then we'd watch it. We'd watch the taped version of that, and then we got Sky Digital in like 1999 because I remember vividly that the first episode, the first thing that we kind of watched, or the first evening that we had, I watched the episode Earshot of Buffy on the first night we got Sky Digital. So yeah, so jumping.
Can I just add something about my dad?
Yeah.
To this day, my grumpy old dad, he has Freeview now because it's free. And he has a 4-bedroom house that he owns on his own with 2 cars on the drive because he won't sell my mom's car even though she's dead. And he has more money in interest than I earn in a month, I think. He still asks people, up until recently, he asked people to record on video the Speedway off Sky. And when people were like, we haven't got a video anymore, he found illegal Polish websites to stream the Speedway. And I'm like, Dad, you sit in your fucking office with a chair that bends your 75-year-old back in a way that would make a child scream, just so you don't have to pay for Sky Sports. Pops, sort it out. Honestly.
So, love it.
Sorry, I had a rant.
So,
he drives
A
me
good one, though.
crazy.
so
I love him so much, but he drives me fucking crazy.
needs to get him a pro subscription to Discovery Plus. I think it's all on there.
Oh, don't. He won't. He will say, "Well, the bloody hell you bought me that for? You know I don't like it." Don't. Move on.
Yeah. So, Lovett Goes to Town.
Oh yeah, that's what we're talking about.
Yes. So Goes to Town. It's a 20-minute interesting oddity, written by Norman Lovett himself. It was directed by Bob Wilde. It's got Richard Hersey as a producer and Graham Hutchins as an editor, starring Norman Lovett as himself and Andrew Dalmeyer as the shopkeeper. And it is basically a story about Norman Lovett going to town to buy light bulbs and some polyfiller, and then also having what might be the first signs of a midlife crisis. All incorporating 95% of the 20-minute thing is him talking to the camera, and it feels like a kind of mix of observational commentary mixed in with just kind of random, almost stand-up comedy asides about life and stuff. And before I say my opinions on it, Carl, what was your first impressions on watching it?
It felt in place. I thought two things. Initially, I was like, this is just his stand-up routine that he's doing while he's walking around, or the bits that he could translate to camera more. And then there was bits which blatantly were, I've walked past something and I've come up with something I can talk about it with, like the bit with the bench, or the bit with the car missing its Volkswagen badge. They didn't feel staged. They felt like he'd just walked past them and gone, hang on a minute, Bob, we can do something here, and give me a couple of minutes. And the point where there's the gag in there where he turns around and said, this is the producer's idea, that did feel like Norman Lovett going, yeah, that was the producer's idea, it's not mine. Because from Red Dwarf, we know he's been that kind of grumpy, likes what he likes sort of guy. So part of me was, it's not within the realms of reality that Norman Lovett would go, yeah, I think this is shit and I'm going to say it on camera.
He doesn't strike me as the nicest fellow to work with, I'll be honest with you.
No. There were bits of it I thought, well, that's quite nice, and that's quite not clever, just nice. The bit where he's a tree, and that leads into the ad break. I didn't realise there'd be an ad break for some reason, because I immediately think that when Norman Lovett's on, it's going to be BBC. I don't know why I think that, but when he sort of did the I'm a tree, I'm set en route, I was like, oh, that's quite a nice, simple, innocent joke. And I think that was probably one of my favourite bits of the whole thing, apart from my reaction to Beastie Boys fans still exist.
So did you like it?
Yeah, I think I did. I'm going to watch it again. I thought the stuff with the shopkeeper was quite unnecessary. You could have taken it out, and I don't think it would have meant anything. Okay. Do you not think that? I think it made no bearing on the plot at all.
I think we'll get back to the shopkeeper, I think in a bit more detail. Yeah. Mark, what about your impressions of it?
My initial impression was, well, isn't this a little bit like Talking Heads by Alan Bennett?
Yes.
And I can only seem to remember a cream cracker under the I can only seem to remember a cream cracker under the settee, which was about, it was Thora Hird, and it was about her encroaching dementia and her obsession with cleanliness, and how she felt like the cleaner had done a poor job coming round her house. But it was 45 minutes and captivating. And this was surreal and peculiar, maybe a little bit more alternative and silly than what I talked about with Talking Heads, but it felt like how is this something I want to watch for 20 minutes when he does fuck all and it's really, really odd, but I still want to watch it. So that's why I thought it was like Talking Heads. And my second impression is Norman Lovett is an odd man. How much of this is a character and how much of this is actually just him because he's odd? And I wonder what the truth is behind Norman Lovett, behind the character he plays in his stand-up, because I do believe he plays a character in his stand-up. Who is the real Norman Lovett? And is he this man that we've seen kind of nasty little things about, how he was, again, like we say, a nightmare to work with, whether he just changed lines that he shouldn't have done in Red Dwarf? Is there a dark undertone behind this peculiar little eccentric that he plays on the screen? And the fact that I thought that watching 20 minutes of basically alternative comedy says a lot about my experience of Red Dwarf, I guess.
Ah, okay.
I think with him as well. I think rather than a consistent dark undertone in him, I think he's one of these people who, if he doesn't get his own way, can be a bit of a pain in the arse.
That's what I was getting at. I wasn't saying he was abusive or cruel or anything, but that's what I was getting at.
Yeah. So things like, when they took his football away and he wanted to keep playing and things like that, so he just sat there with his arms folded. I think he's just a bit, like you say, he's an odd little man and probably a bit childish. But in this, when it shows his wife and kid, I didn't have any issue believing that was probably his real wife and child. You know what I mean?
I'd love to know if it was.
I couldn't find it.
They aren't credited, so that's what made me think that they probably are.
Yeah, I couldn't find much information on that, but yeah.
It felt like a shoestring budget, so I'm also inclined to believe that they basically did it for free, and they are his wife and kid.
Yeah, I get the feeling that just from the way some of the places look, like the streets and stuff, because he left Red Dwarf and went to Scotland, because he married his wife and moved to Edinburgh, I think it was. And some of like the streets and that, like I think this is like just around his area. He's just gone out with, because I mean, early satellite broadcasting, like you say, there's no money if it's not in a live setting with like a theatre or something. So yeah, it's probably shot on, it wouldn't be like SVHS or anything. It probably shot on like high band tape or something. And just wandering around the town. Because if you look at the crew at the end of it, it's like 8 people max.
Yeah. Like I say, shoestring budget. But I like when you get the right project with the right shoestring budget, it can be fucking sublime. Something I watched recently that eventually got picked up by Netflix, but it was originally a YouTube show, was a gay soap opera type drama called East Siders. And from day one, it was sublime because the writing felt authentic for gay people. And this does feel a bit like that, but in a comedy way rather than a drama way, that I thought I was going to hate this. And I was going through it thinking I should hate this, but I really like this.
Yeah. So I absolutely bloody love this. I thought this was amazing. I love this. Because I think this popped up in our kind of messenger chat a while ago, and I remember watching it, and I was like, man, I love this, and then I watched it again yesterday, and I was like, no, yeah, I still think this is great. There's a kind of a weird oddity to it. There's like it's almost like the precursor to Fleabag at times. But if Phoebe Waller-Bridge was a middle-aged, balding comedian wandering around Edinburgh, and I've then now suddenly just got Norman Lovett just pointing to the camera going, fuck me up the arse, which I've just got in my head for some reason. If anyone hasn't watched Fleabag, then you're not going to understand that reference at all.
We're not doing a special on Fleabag.
Give it time, Mark. You'll get one. You'll get us doing it. But yeah, this was just like a very kind of nice, weird, quirky. Well, perhaps not too quirky, but this is just like a very weird oddity, kind of fourth wall breaking, just thing of Norman Lovett having like total control over something, and like if him wanted to do something, and I just thought it was great. It's slow, but just like captivating, and just like his rock commentary is quite hilarious and quite near the knuckle. I mean, I want to probably talk about it in a bit more detail. There's a bit where he talks about TV presenters, which is like a bit, okay. At one point,
For me, I think that with Norman Lovett in complete control of something, it absolutely should have been a complete car crash. But it
Yeah.
wasn't. It
Yeah.
was dry humour, it was alternative, it was surreal, it was about as fucking 90s as I think something ever
Yes.
could get. And I felt a weird kind of nostalgia for the kind of incredibly low budget 90s comedy that I really, really liked as I was growing up in the 90s. And I definitely got a massive nostalgia hit from this, even though I didn't watch it at the time.
Yeah, it's based more on the personalities in it rather than like, because this was part of an anthology series, wasn't it? A bit like Sky used to do the Christmas Crackers, or Channel 4 used to do the Comedy Lab, where they used to get, they used to get a good couple of shows out of it if the pilot episode did well.
Yeah.
And I think this for them is, like I said, they picked a load of stand-ups and said, if you've got anything, bring it to us. And this is what Norman Lovett came out with, and they're like, "Oh, right, well, let's put it on, and see what it does," because they're not gonna. I always remember the Adam and Joe show.
Yeah,
yeah. I've got the DVD of that, and there's a documentary on how they made it, because they filmed everything, and they literally made a pilot season, and Channel 4 went, "There's no money, so if it's good, we're just going to put that on the air." And that's what happened. And I can imagine BSB with less money than Channel 4, which is not out of the realms to guess is the case, have gone, "Norman, if it looks good, we might put some credits on it for you, but we'll just stick it on the air." And I think that's what they've done here, because it is shot quite nicely. It's a nice wander round.
Yeah, the
Edinburgh.
location stuff is lovely. I initially thought that the whole thing would be shot in his shonky house, but he then went out. But of course, I shouldn't have thought that, because the thing's called Lovett Goes to Town. It's just the impression you got at the start was it was going to be this weirdo in his house.
The thing with that is, even though it's called Lovett Goes to Town, at no point did I actually go, well, he's going to go to town. I just thought it would just be, in the other phrasing of going to town, in that, he's going to like let loose with his opinions or something like that. I never actually thought it would mean I'm going to town to buy some light bulbs.
No, I never thought about that actually. But I quite like the mundane aspect of it, because there's an I do think there's like an interesting kind of undercurrent of throughout it, in that it gets more surreal as it goes on, and it's like it feels like someone about to go onto a verge of a midlife crisis, or into a midlife crisis, and just constantly questioning everything.
So how old was Norman Lovett at this point? Because I'm a certain age, and I'm worried that I'm about to have my midlife crisis, or I'm currently going through it. If he was 40-ish, then shit, am I middle-aged?
So I did the maths. 1990 take away 1946. He was 44 when this was filmed.
Oh, for fuck's sake, he's a year older than me.
Yeah.
Right.
He probably had a massive heart attack at this point as well.
Right. I have got less hair now than he has in this, but I at least do it with a dignified fuck. I am nothing like this guy, and
I don't think any of us would want Norman Lovett's hairstyle, though, Mark.
True. But I just, does that mean I'm middle-aged and I'm likely to have or currently having a midlife crisis?
You're much more handsome, darling.
I want enough money to have a midlife crisis. I can't afford a motorbike.
You need
just stand outside and go vroom vroom.
That's not a midlife crisis. That's actually having
crisis.
That's a cry for
an
help.
episode. Yeah, it is.
But there's like, I think as it goes on, I think like where it's just like, oh, I've got to go and get some light bulbs and some polyfiller. And to be fair, I've had weekends and like in my early to mid 30s where I'm like, crap, I've got to go out and get a light bulb, get light bulbs, got to get something. and it's just a kind of there's a kind of like a weird relatability to it.
Oh, that's what I'm doing tomorrow.
Yeah.
I
I've
can't
gotta go get
relate
coat
to
hangers.
this. I can't relate to this at all. I
Have you
keep
never
myself.
never replaced a light bulb? Do you have like ever?
Well, yes, but I will go days with a missing light bulb because I'm too busy. I keep myself white knuckle busy, and it feels to me like I feel so much younger attitude-wise than the
dark.
character portrayed in this. And I don't know whether that says a lot about me being childish or fucking Peter Pan complex or whatever, but I don't want to be this old in 9 months' time when I'm 44.
But like, no, I think like there's like the case where like, oh crap, I mean, the bulb went in my bathroom. I can't spend weeks like having a shower with using the light from my mobile phone. I had like you have to kind of like bite the bullet and say no, I need to go out and get a bulb.
Yeah, you'd swing by somewhere rather than make it an event, though. I feel like he makes this an event, and it's a big deal for his day. And please
yeah,
tell me that you don't do that.
You obviously don't enjoy going around Wilco's as much as I do, Mark.
Oh, for fuck's sake!
There's
I quite like going around IKEA. I'll give you that.
Yeah.
There's a sense of like weird kind of thing, like when you're going through B&Q. I'm like, one day I need looking at the bath panels and going, I really need to change the one in my bathroom, but I don't know if that will fit in my car. And I'm like, you stand there thinking, I remember when my money was spent on gigs, and but no, it's that kind of, it's like the kind of mundane, but the impression you get, and leads to a point that I think leads to a point I want to make want to make it as well, is that there's a kind of like undercurrent which I don't think doesn't get enough exploration in this 20-minute sketch, in that there's kind of, you get like the hints that perhaps he's just kind of either unfulfilled or just bored, and that is just an event. So he's reached the kind of apex, and like going through what might be a classical midlife crisis, and he's got his kind of wry kind of observational comedy and stuff, but it's him kind of having this kind of dour kind of like view of the world and stuff, and there's just something kind of captivating about that. And
I think
I got a bit confused at the bit where he's talking to his wife and his wife's telling him what he's going to fetch, and then you hear somebody off camera say, "Look, we're trying to record a TV show." I thought that was a pretty fun gag. I did. It was like, what you got to do? I got to do this, this, and this. Oh, don't forget you're recording a TV show as well. Oh yeah, cheers. And I just kind of loved that.
It was the kind of gag that you would get 10 a penny now, but that kind of fourth wall breaking was rarer in 1990, I think.
Well, he kind of, because I looked into the sort of the time frame, because he did do I Love It, where he was more of like a crackpot professor, but a very similar thing. But he'd actually done the pilot for that before this, and he didn't make the full series of I Love It until 1993. So, because I've seen an episode of I Love It, and this, I was like, oh, it's going to be like this, especially when we said at the beginning he's in the house talking to the penguin. Is it the penguin he's talking to or the dog? I can't remember. But it is, I think he's kind of, this is him road testing stuff, and then using, when he does repitch I Love It later on, because you get the feeling that this is something he really wants to do, because it's very similar to how he actually is, or very similar to what he does in his stand-up work. And I think this and the pilot to I Love It, which I'm not sure if I've seen the actual pilot, I think these are kind of fine-tuning for when he comes back in a couple of years with the series for I Love It and actually gets it on the air.
That's probably fair.
Yeah.
Can I take umbrage with something else as well, please?
Go on, then.
He talks about how trying wine at a table and stuff like that. And he says trying beer isn't a thing. Has the man not been to a beer festival? I love a beer festival. I love having like a third of the weird beer that's flavoured like fucking biscuits. I love that shit. Get the weird beers into me. At my pub, we've got a marshmallow beer at the moment. Lovely. We've had a coconut stout. Brilliant. I love all that. And I got quite cross. Maybe
they weren't as big in 1990. That, maybe they were underground thing.
I mean, I was 12 in
1990.
1990, so I definitely wouldn't have had like croissant flavour beer at that point.
Croissant flavoured beer.
Unless you were dumping a croissant in beer.
That does exist.
Wow. But no, I say that I think there's like some of the kind of observations and stuff that he makes. I thought can be quite silly and quite simple, but actually quite. I think it's in his delivery. I think one of my favourite jokes in it was like he goes to the kitchen, he goes, "A wash kettle never boils." Turns it on, like rubbish in it.
That's a good
and
gag.
he just stares at it and he goes, and he like it boils and he goes, "It's load of rubbish in it," and it's just the way he delivers it and the timing. It's just I had to pause the video. I was laughing that hard.
Again, very 90s observational comedy. It did remind me a lot of a program that I adored as a kid, and that was This Morning with Richard Not Judy by Lee and Herring.
Yes.
Okay.
And the dry alternative humour was huge in the 90s. And you look at how that's developed into Stuart Lee's current comedy. It's brilliant. And I could see myself thoroughly enjoying a 75-year-old Norman Lovett's stand-up comedy if he basically hasn't changed from this.
That boiled kettle joke, that felt like, to me, something that he's probably done live in his stand-up. And if he does it live in his stand-up, it goes down really, really well. If somebody else would to do that joke in their stand-up, people would go, "Oh, for God." You know what I mean? His delivery in it is, he knows what his material will work.
Yeah, I think if just to get a bit kind of analytical on the joke for a second, a watch kettle never boils, like rubbish in it. I think it's the way he says it, but it's like the cadence and the timing of that. It's like the length of a Tim Vine joke, but Tim Vine's got a very kind of punny, kind of like just very scattered, just puns, like jokes a minute. It's kind of like the inverse of that, but on the same level, so to speak. So it's not a punny, but it's very short, very short and sharp observational, kind of the opposite of what Tim Vine does, I think. And like where you got like a joke with a whole, where when you think about it afterwards, there's a lot more to it. And I just thought it was really, really clever.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, it is. Yeah. This is a comedian who knows what works for him, and what will work. Like, I can imagine, obviously he's done Red Dwarf, but Red Dwarf wasn't a massive stretch of what he does, if you know what I mean. It's him basically reading while sitting very, very still with a polo neck on. But for this feels like him kind of off the lead, in that he can do what he wants and show what he's showing what he can do, and it's probably one of the first times anyone's going to see him do that. Yeah,
exactly. And I think it works quite well. If we move on slightly, so like you got the first half where it is pretty much him. The second half is when he's actually in town properly. He starts interacting with, well, quote unquote, other characters. So he goes into the shops to buy light bulbs, and there's a very kind of surreal moment that you mentioned earlier, where he kind of, there's a bit where the shopkeeper it's almost like a very weird allegory to buying an engagement ring. Or at one point,
very much so.
Yeah, well, they're talking about light bulbs. He walks out, looks at the camera, and goes, "You forgot to charge me." And he's like, "No, sir, take them and stuff." And then he goes to the hardware store to get a filler thingy with polyfiller and the tool that I can never remember.
It's a scraper, spatula.
Yeah, scraper, whatever they're called. Filler spreader thingy. Yeah, and then sees the actor that plays the shopkeeper again, and he goes, "No, I'm a different character." And then there's a whole kind of weird thing where he goes, "I'll take you there," and then there's the kind of a weird kind of single shot where they just normally try to avoid walking into him again, and then there's like he goes to, I think, a park or something where he sits on a rock and then talks to himself or another character playing himself, and then gets told to move along by the same actor that played the previous two characters, and then that's it. Then he heads home.
It seems like a piss take on his own budget in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and again, I think it was quite clever because again, there's a strong self-awareness that it knows exactly what it's doing. It knows exactly what its audience is expecting, which I think for something that was done in 1990, I think possibly ahead of its time, because because that kind of self-awareness, you get that kind of self-awareness 15 years later, particularly when Arrested Development started playing around with that kind of level of self-awareness and being referential about itself. Yeah, so like the fact that he goes, oh, hang on, you're the shopkeeper. He goes, no, I'm not. And he goes, and then he kind of just like, you just kind of accept it, even though kind of the idea being he's in the exact same costume and the exact same clothes, and it's just kind of a joke at the budget's expense. But I think he's wearing a different coat, I think, when he's outside. But yeah, it's just that kind of thing that I quite like. So, in terms of the shopkeeper, I know Carl mentioned that it was slightly off. What was your? Why do you think it could have gone? The special could have gone without him.
It just felt kind of. It kind of interrupted the flow weirdly for me because I was enjoying his observations and this, that, and the other, and then bringing another. I thought it was going to be like Mark said, like a talking head of him just going around and then bringing in another character, and for that to be essentially the only other character, it just kind of stopped the flow of it, kind of for me. I do appreciate whoever uses it's the Rolls Royce of insert product here. It's just a great line. But yeah, I thought the performance was a bit sinister.
I think it was supposed to be sinister.
Yeah.
I think what it might be is again. I didn't again, as you said earlier, this might be him protesting stuff. I think it might be him trying to kind of work out if this was extended over into an actual series, how other characters would interact with the quote unquote Norman character that he's playing. So I think it's just him trying to work out like how he'd interact with people. And and the point I do think that perhaps if this was to go to an actual series, it probably wasn't meant to be one, but if this kind of thing went to a series, you'd probably have him interacting with like a different person in each episode. Kind of like, is it the Greg Davies' new one, The Cleaner, where he's just him and a well-known guest star, or like a name at least. The recognisable name.
I can imagine that would be the case with this. There'd only be like one other character.
Yeah.
I mean, the only other characters, because it's not like you didn't have more actors, because you had the Bears. My thing with that is he went, "This isn't my gag; it's the producer's gag," and then it just stopped.
I love that.
Part of me was going like, "But what was the gag?"
I think again, it's that kind of like weird thing where like because the way that the bench is done, you've got like the bench side of the bench for tall people and the bench for little people, and then I think in literature when you think of big, middle, small, you've got the Goldilocks and the three bears. So you've got this is too big, this is too middle, this is too short, and so I think it's kind of reference to the three bears. So like, and he's just talking about that if you're small, you can sit on the one side. If you're big, you can sit on the other side. And again, it's one of those gags. It's kind of like the kettle gag that you if you stop and think about it, you have to kind of think about the joke, and it's a nice visual gag at first, and then you kind of, and I think he gets the immediate punchline in with saying it's not my gag, it's the producer's gag, and then when you go off, there's a bit of period where you suddenly assimilate the joke you've just watched, and you think, and you just realise what it's doing, and you're like, oh yeah, because of the three bears and stuff, and it's funnier the more you think about it.
Yeah. I think, I mean, my favourite bit of that bit was in a very similar way to how the kettle gag was, is that he sits down and then goes, well, can't sit around here all day, and gets straight back up again. I liked that. It's, you know, it's in the performance. Like I say, if another performer did that, it may not work. And I think the strength of this is because it's Norman Lovett doing it. Mm-hmm. That what carries it off. I mean, there's the famous story that he can stand on stage and not say anything, just looking at an audience and have them rolling in the aisles until he just goes, what, at the end.
And that's perhaps why I like this so much because that's very similar to Stuart Lee, my favourite comedian that I talked about before.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, and so and do you have any thoughts on the Three Bears gag, Mark, or before we move on?
I just thought it was deliberate and probably not the producer's idea. The whole gag was that he was taking the piss out of the producer, and it wasn't that he ad-libbed that. Whereas a lot of the previous stuff I do genuinely believe was ad-libbed, which is probably my favourite element of the show, which is why I found the first half more enjoyable than the second.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that was very much a planned gag, kind of nod, nudge, nudge, nod, nod, wink, wink. I don't think it was him shading at all. I think that was very much a planned gag. And it still worked. It was deliberately surreal and peculiar, but in a different way to the rest of the show, which made it incongruous. And that's why he put it in, because he wanted something incongruous.
Yeah.
And it's clever. It's fucking clever is what it is.
No, yeah, I completely agree with you there. It's just, again, I say it just makes you think about it, and I think the humour just comes in throughout. And again, when he does the magic trick to the plant to try and cheer it up, yeah, and it's just like this kind of like one take where he just does this really weird, kind of like really lame magic trick, and then and then just like just to try and cheer up this plant, this 200-year plant, and it's just kind of weird and just off center, and it just means nothing, but it's just kind of, it's weird. It's like, it's the kind of like Sideshow Bob on a rake where you just kind of overextend something just a bit too long, where it stops being funny and then becomes funny again. When you realise, okay, they're going for the whole thing.
That's my favourite kind of gag. Legitimately, that's my favourite kind of gag. I will laugh at that more than the funniest joke.
Yeah.
Do you think with this show there was something quite quintessentially British about it? Because I think if this was done by an American, everything would be, whoa, it's all zany, and it's kind of looks to camera almost like, I can't do it because we're on an audio one, but looks to camera like, oh, look what happened there. That was a bit wacky, wasn't it? Whereas here he's just doing, everything's normal.
I feel like his delivery of this kind of peculiarity is quintessentially British, and peculiar would have been done differently in America. Yes, absolutely, I do.
Yeah. It kind of drew this, and I love it, which I'm sure we'll get around to in a special at some point. I'm sure it's drawn comparisons to like Pee-wee's Playhouse, even though the energy is like completely different. It's quite odd to think of Norman Lovett working with Pee-wee Herman.
That's the crossover that no one had ever thought of before, but now everybody wants.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be interesting to see what Norman Lovett would do now. If he said, do you want to make a show like you did back in the day, would he do something similar to what we've seen here? Or do you think he'd change it up? Or do you think I think that's still his sense of humour. And I think he'd probably try and do something like this again.
I think it would be a cross between this and One Foot in the Grave if he were to do it now.
Yeah.
So, and I think just before we start wrapping up, I kind of wish we had something a bit more like this, or at least one series of it, because I'd be interested to see how it goes. But then it'd probably be, there's an alternative world where we got a full 6-episode series of this, but just the one series, and it became kind of like one of these weird cult classics that only lasted one series, something like Garth Marenghi or something. That was has got a very cult fan base, and has kind of lasted in the zeitgeist. Oh, do you remember so-and-so and stuff? And I want to go to that dimension to watch it.
Right, so there is one thing I wanted to ask you.
Yeah.
What's with the wooden penguins? I don't get it. Is it just that he had an item that he liked and was like, lol, I'm not going to explain it, I'm just going to put it on screen a lot?
Yeah.
Or is there something I've missed?
I've got no idea what it means, but again, I think it's great, because there's a moment where he just talks about the ducks, and then the penguin it looks like it's been green screened. Or someone's holding it up on the camera and just turns and faces it and then just puts it back down again. No idea what it is, but again, it's just, unless he's inanimate penguin, he's getting annoyed that he's talking about ducks and not penguins. And that's how I read it.
Yeah, that's also how I read it. But I'm glad I didn't miss anything. I'm glad it was just odd for odd's sake, and I'm not stupid.
Well, looking here, I was just having a quick look to see if I could have found the I Love It, and I think I've actually found the I Love It pilot, which is from before this. And also there's something of him doing stand-up from 2 years ago, and it's called Norman Lovett and His Magical Plastic Bag. So it looks like he's very much still in the same vibe.
I want to watch Norman Lovett and His Magical Plastic Bag. Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's another one to prioritize on the specials.
It's only a minute long, but I'll send it to you. But
I need to kind of watch I Love It. I've not watched it at all.
I think the one that's online is the pilot, 'cause it's just like a one-off, and then there's a trailer for the whole series on there as well. But if I can find it, we'll absolutely have to do a special, because I think Norman and Hattie Hayridge are two actors in Red Dwarf that we haven't got the most stuff outside of Dwarf, or if they have, it's not freely available, and it's nice to go and look at these things. Definitely,
there's a lot of tap from all of the actors that we can watch. There really is.
Yeah. So, and with that, unless anyone else has any other thoughts to add to it,
no, I'm all good.
I think I'd just say that if you just listen to this episode without watching Lovett Goes to Town, bloody watch it. It's 22 minutes and it's lots of fun. It's perhaps strangely hit and miss, but it is 22 minutes of weird nostalgia for something that you never watched first.
I'm just going to quickly read a YouTube comment on the video. Well, a couple of them actually, where it says, this show is incredibly relaxing. And there was another one that I saw. Oh, can't find it. This show is incredibly relaxing. And then so I'm pretty sure I found a comment somewhere which had a comment about, this is like ASMR, but in comedy form. So if you've not watched Lovett Goes to Town, I fully recommend watching it. I said I love it. It's I love it.
Fun there, right there. Well done.
Yeah, about the wrong Norman Lovett vehicle. I should have saved that one for the I Love It. I Love It special. But I thought this was amazing. The more I thought about it, the more I think about the jokes, the more funny I find them. It's just that kind of weird thing, and I wish that there was more of it. So I think that's it. We've had our chat about Lovett Goes to Town on an episode that is twice as long as the actual 22 minutes.
Brevity is not our strong point, is it?
No. But then again, we have had episodes of the main podcast which has gone for at least 3 times the length of episodes of Red Dwarf.
True.
So okay. So Mark, if people want to find you online, where can they find you?
If you're looking for me, it's at Mark Adams HC on Twitter and on Instagram. I'm on various podcasts across the We Made This Podcast network. I'm a regular host on Podcast 616, which is our MCU podcast. I'm also one of the hosts of Chucky Vision, which is our Chucky franchise Child's Play podcast, and I am the lead host on Right in the Childhood, which is a podcast about kids' telly, where people talk about their happy memories before they rewatch a show and then see if it hits them right in the childhood. All of these are available on whatever you are listening to Shipwrecked and Comatose on. Just give it a search.
And Carl, what about you?
You can find me at allmylinks.com/Mr. Carl. Again, at the time of recording, I'm not up to a great deal at the moment, but I will be. I will be back for, as Marcus quote has called me, I am the Tat Master.
I called you that off air. You've outed yourself, mate.
But I feel like that is a title that I am going to have to turn into something. So keep your eye out, because Tat Master will be coming soon.
Tat Master. It's like Taskmaster, but
with Tats.
much more laid back.
I've never actually watched Taskmaster, so I can't actually make a reference to that.
I haven't, and it's supposed to be good.
It's very good. There's a couple of series which are a bit duff, but the early ones are absolutely brilliant.
Okay.
Oh, anyway, Matt, where can people find you before we forget the host?
Thank you, Mark. Thank you for remembering me. Yes, if people want to find me, they can find me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram under the name Pick a Disc, which is coincidentally the same name as the podcast I host, which is where I speak to someone about an album that they want to talk about for whatever reason they want to. At the time of airing, I'm currently about to start my 4th year doing it. Very exciting.
That's a 10th of your life that you've been doing that podcast, mate.
I'm not that old.
Exactly. It's more than a 10th. It's a 13th of your life.
Wow. And considering my previous podcast didn't even go past episode 3. And yeah, I'm gearing up to my 100th this year. Flipping heck. 100th episode, which was the first episode I actually planned on doing before I did the first one. Anyway, you can find that and majority and all the other shows that we've mentioned as well on the We Made This Podcast network, which that Shipwrecked and Comatose is proudly a member of. Feel free to stay listening, and you'll hear a few other things from the network in the contractually obliged section we have to put on the end of each episode. A bit later on, and also
subtle.
and also the contractually obliged Patreon ad that we have to do as well. So again, if you're listening to the first time, and it's a very weird episode of the podcast for you to listen to for the first time, feel free to follow us on the podcast apps. You can subscribe. You can follow us on Twitter on Red Dwarf Pod. Is that right?
Yeah, at Red Dwarf Pod.
At Red Dwarf Pod. I don't know if we're on any other places.
We're not, because I hate Instagram.
Yeah, you can see.
It's like Twitter on hard mode, mate. Fuck that shit. Life's too short.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, Mark's incorrect opinion on Instagram aside, you can follow us on Instagram's better than Twitter.
You can do the fucking Shipwrecked and Comatose fucking Instagram then. Off you go.
It's bloody hard work doing the pick. This one is only that. So before we start a civil war based on Team Instagram and Team Twitter, there's one thing left to say, and that is
that was terrible, mate.
Shipwrecked and Comatose, a Red Dwarf podcast, was created and produced by Mark Adams and Kurt North. You can find us on Twitter at Red Dwarf Pod, and we are part of the We Made This Podcast network, which can be found online at wemadethispod.com or on Twitter at We Made This Pod.
Hello everyone, this is Tony, Network Chief of We Made This. As you know, our podcast network brings together a brilliant assortment of talent who talk about all kinds of pop culture content, such as the episode you've just listened to, or maybe you're just about to listen to. We're not going anywhere, but we'd love to keep the lights on for even longer if you're able to support our network on Patreon. For just £2 a month, you get your name in lights and the satisfaction of knowing you're helping us produce more great audio. And for £3 a month, you'll get your name in lights, but you'll also get access to an exclusive bi-monthly podcast from the We Made This talent pool on podcasting, pop culture, and, well, you tell us. We'll take your suggestions. For less than the price of a coffee per month, you can help keep We Made This going. Just head to patreon.com/We Made This. That's patreon.com/We Made This. And get the ball rolling. Now, back to your scheduled programming. Elsewhere on We Made This. Chucky Vision.
The next poll is a little bit more interesting. It was survive or die again with the adult characters. And the characters were Logan, Bree, Michelle, and Detective Evans. And the Chucky Vision listeners predicted that Detective Evans would survive. the week before she died on the show.
I remember that. Yeah, that we made that poll. Well, I was going to say premature. We made that poll probably at the perfect time.
Yep, I think so. And they also predicted that the character that would die would be Michelle. And looking at the characters, Michelle is the only one of the 4 that actually survived.
Free with this month's issue.
I was looking up what the point of the band name was, because obviously Black Country being sort of like about a mile away from where I am right now.
Yeah.
Black Country New Road, they have said it's a metaphor for a good way out of a bad place. So, fuck you! Not going to endear themselves too many Midlanders with that. Dudley Zoo and Wolverhampton Civic Hall are fucking ace.
Yep, both of those places. Well done, Colin.
Yeah.
Successfully defended yourself with 2 locations.
I have. Alright, West Midland Safari Park's pretty cool as well.
Yeah.
Frame to frame.
This episode was our Christmas horror film episode.
Yeah.
Now you mention Gremlins.
Whoa.
Where was that a week ago?
Well, I mean, what can I say?
I mean, genuinely, this is
you should have consulted the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come, and you would have been able to see this situation happening before it did. So
this is episode 81 of the podcast, right? And I will flat out say to you now, this is the worst film I've watched for this podcast. It is worse than Sextet. It is worse than Cats. I just hated everything.
Check out all of these shows and more on the We Made This podcast network.